There is a type of intelligence they never talk about. You won't find it in classrooms. No curriculum teaches it. No degree certifies it. Yet everyone recognizes it when they feel it, because it's the kind of power that doesn't shine. It shadows. It doesn't chase applause. It erases the need for it. It moves like a whisper and cuts like a scalpel. Silent, invisible, surgical. You've seen it. The man who never raises his voice, yet commands the entire room. The woman who smiles softly as she pulls the strings no one else even sees. They don't speak often, but when they do, the room quiets. Not out of respect, but out of tension. Their words don't echo because they don't need to. Their words land like steel-tipped darts. This is dark intelligence. And once you recognize it, once your eyes adjust to its shape in the dark, you will never see the world the same way again. Because this kind of mind doesn't react. It watches. It doesn't beg. It positions. It doesn't fight. It ends things. Quietly. Machiavelli didn't glorify brilliance for its shine. He admired intellect for its danger, for its quiet ability to dominate, undetected. If you've always sensed you were different, not softer, but sharper, this is your confirmation. Once you unlock this knowledge, you won't fit into the ordinary world ever again. And you won't want to. They don't teach you this. Not in schools, not in books, and definitely not in polite society. Because if people truly understood how dark intelligence works, they'd be terrified of you long before you ever lifted a finger. It doesn't start with study. It starts with silence. At first, you're just quiet. You don't talk to be heard. You listen to know. You begin noticing the fractures in people's stories, the desperation hidden in their laughter. You smile at jokes that aren't funny, not because you're amused, but because you're collecting data. You start to realize the world is full of madness disguised as order. People argue about things that don't matter. They lie to protect fragile egos. They shout when they're afraid. They perform strength while crumbling inside. And you just watch, quietly, patiently, until the pattern reveals itself. And then, something clicks. The truth is simple. People are predictable when they think they're safe. That's when you strike, not with noise, but with awareness. You learn to ask the kinds of questions that don't get answers, but provoke confessions. You say less, and watch them fill the silence with revelations. You don't provoke emotion, you let their own unravel them. While they see you as harmless, you're harvesting information, unnoticed and absolute. Dark intelligence doesn't demand attention. It thrives in quiet corners and unguarded spaces. And then, your mind begins to shift. You stop seeing people for who they pretend to be. You start seeing them as they function, as tools, as risks, as leverage. You begin spotting liars before they open their mouths. You identify insecurity masked as arrogance. You feel betrayal before it arrives. You move 5 seconds faster, 5 steps ahead, because your thinking is no longer emotional. It's surgical. Strategic. This is the turning point. It's not when you get smarter. It's when you stop being naive. You start realizing that truth is optional. Perception is what rules the world. That trust is currency, easily forged. And most people aren't lying to hurt you. They're lying because they're terrified of being seen. You learn to master those illusions, not because you're cruel, but because that's the only way to survive with clarity. You stop defending yourself. You stop explaining your decisions. You stop reacting to disrespect. You simply begin orchestrating consequences that unfold without confrontation. You let people reach the edge on their own, and then you let them fall. That's the elegance of dark intelligence. It bends the rules, reshapes the board, and always moves unseen. You don't expose your mind. You don't announce your plans. You stop letting people know when they've hurt you, because pain in your world is no longer something to express. It's information. And data is power. You begin evolving into something new, not cruel, not heartless, just precise. This is the transformation Machiavelli respected above all. The moment someone stops trying to fit into a broken system and begins to reshape it without fanfare. And the most dangerous part? No one even notices the change until it's already too late. They still think you're quiet, passive, harmless, but they don't realize they've been tangled in your net for weeks, maybe months, because you've been playing a long game, setting pieces, positioning outcomes. And now, you don't chase power. You are power. This is the birth of dark intelligence, not a lightning bolt, but a slow, methodical storm. Now you don't chase. Things come to you. You walk through doors others knock on. You move through rooms without needing validation. You've stepped beyond the threshold. You've stopped trying to be liked. You've let go of the need to prove your worth. And now you've become something others fear but cannot explain. You've started developing the traits that disturb people without them knowing why. The first is emotional disconnection. They notice your calm first, the way you don't flinch when challenged, the way you don't crack under pressure. You've disconnected, not by denial, but by understanding. You don't suppress emotions, you decode them. Your anger becomes analysis, your sadness becomes vision, your fear becomes foresight. You don't let emotions control you, you use them to see what others can't. While the world panics, you observe. While others crumble, you calculate. Silence becomes your sharpening stone. And within it, your mind grows sharper. The second trait is surgical observation. You no longer just look, you dissect. You watch their eyes when they lie. You notice the tremble in their voice when they want something. You hear what they don't say. You feel the tension when truth is being buried, and you don't need a confession. You already know. This is what makes you unsettling. You make people feel seen, and it scares them, because instinctively, they know you can see what they've spent a lifetime trying to hide. Machiavelli once said, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." You understand that completely. Betrayal isn't surprising. It's expected. So you watch for it before it's even formed. The third trait is controlled presence. When you enter a room, you don't need to announce yourself. Your energy shifts the air. You don't need to speak to be felt. Why? Because you're not trying to entertain. You're trying to be unreadable. Mystery is your currency. You offer glimpses, never clarity. You drop enough signal to earn curiosity, but not enough to be mapped. People fear what they don't understand, and you give them just enough uncertainty to keep them cautious. You've learned that power doesn't come from being everywhere. It comes from being missed when you're not. You become rare, and rarity becomes power. The fourth trait is strategic speech. Most people speak to fill the void. You speak to plant. Each word is calculated. Every sentence is a message. You use silence as punctuation. You lead people not by argument, but by direction, making them believe they arrived at conclusions you architected. You know when to compliment. You know when to say nothing. You know when silence is louder than truth. And once you speak, the conversation bends, subtly, silently, irreversibly. The fifth is unshakable self-reliance. The final phase. The trait that breaks most people, but makes the dangerously intelligent untouchable. You need no praise, no recognition, no understanding. You've become your own source of validation. And when someone has nothing left to prove, they cannot be manipulated. They try guilt. They try shame. They try affection. None of it moves you, because the version of you that craved clarity, loyalty, or affection is gone, buried, replaced by someone who shows up only when it's strategic and disappears when it's time to be missed. And that silence? It's more powerful than any threat. This is not the end. It's the emergence of a new force in the world. An anomaly. An awareness so sharp that it cannot be explained, only felt. That's dark intelligence. And it's just beginning. Dark intelligence means nothing if it isn't applied. Knowledge without motion is just a secret, and power without execution is wasted potential. You've developed the traits. You've honed the weapon. Now it's time to unsheath it, not with noise, but with precision. This isn't about showing the world who you are. It's about shaping the world without them knowing you did it. You begin by mastering the art of control, not dominance, but direction. Most people speak to win. You speak to extract. You let others talk. You let them expose themselves. Your questions aren't innocent, even when they sound like it. Why do you think that? What happened after? How did that make you feel? These aren't curiosities. They're scalpels. With each answer, you identify pressure points, locate weaknesses, uncover patterns. Then you shift, just slightly. You say something subtle, just enough to change their course, never enough to reveal your own. Because you're not in the conversation. You're inside it, steering it from within. Then you discover silence, not as absence, but as presence. Most people fear silence. It unsettles them. They scramble to fill it with justifications, apologies, distractions. But you use it. Someone attempts to manipulate you? You say nothing. Let the stillness expose them. Let the quiet make them sweat. People expect opposition. They expect defense. You give them stillness. And that stillness, that's pressure, real, tangible, terrifying. You pause before you speak. You look a moment longer than what's comfortable. You let your presence sit heavy on their chest. Because silence isn't empty. It's a force. And the world isn't used to someone who can hold that kind of weight without flinching. Next, you learn to mirror. Not in a way that mimics, but in a way that manipulates. If someone is angry, you meet them with tension. If they're insecure, you hesitate. If they're confident, you downplay. Then you pivot. You twist their own emotions, not to break them, but to steer them. Anger? You redirect it. Make them focus on a third party. Insecurity? You flatter them into alignment with your purpose. Pride? You leverage it to guide them where you want them. Because true manipulation isn't control. It's guidance masked as understanding. You let them walk willingly into your design, and they think it was their idea. You never reveal your intentions before the outcome is secure. You let them misunderstand you, underestimate you, misjudge you. And when the moment comes, when the result is undeniably in your favor, you reveal the truth, not loudly but coldly. They realize too late they were never in control. They were a piece on your board. Nothing haunts a person more than the knowledge they helped design their own defeat. You never use power emotionally. That's where most people fall. They get angry. They want to prove a point. They punish to feel righteous. But you respond only when it benefits your position, never your ego. You don't raise your voice. You don't create spectacle. If you remove someone, you do it cleanly. No mess, just absence. A door that shuts and never reopens. If someone crosses you, you don't respond in the moment. You wait. You study. You act when the outcome strengthens your position, not your pride. This is not revenge. This is correction. Calculated, surgical, final. You hide your depth. Not because you're secretive, but because people respect intelligence, yet they fear what they can't map. You let them see a sliver. 60%. Just enough to seem sharp. Never enough to be traced. Because when people feel safe, they get sloppy. And when they're sloppy, they reveal everything. Let them think they're smarter. Let them believe they're guiding you, and all the while the path they're on is one you built. You don't need a throne to rule. You don't need credit to win. Dark intelligence is silent domination, influence without presence, control without recognition. Machiavelli understood this, that the fox outmaneuvers the lion. Anyone can roar, but the fox? The fox bites in the dark and leaves no prints. And by now, your mind isn't just sharp. It's weaponized. What most people don't realize is that the most dangerous arena isn't business. It's not politics. It's relationships. This is where people hand over their logic in exchange for affection, where they abandon boundaries to feel needed, where they explain, beg, and surrender in the name of love or loyalty. But when you operate with dark intelligence, relationships stop being emotional traps. They become power structures. Every interaction becomes a calculation. Every exchange, a negotiation. Every word, a test. You begin to see through people with unsettling clarity. A compliment? Maybe a bribe. Silence? Maybe a threat. Laughter? Maybe a mask. Most people reveal their intent too soon. They want to be liked. They want to be accepted. So they offer everything. Their stories, their fears, their pain, in the hope of being embraced. You, however, say little. Not because you're cruel, because you're reading, measuring. You let them go first. You let them speak and speak and speak, until they hang themselves with the rope you handed them. You don't reveal your history. You don't explain your standards. You don't even correct their misconceptions, because the less they know, the less they can exploit. Meanwhile, you know everything about them. You pick up on the cracks in their confidence, the insecurity buried in their jokes, the motive hidden behind their generosity. And when someone tests you, you don't react, you vanish. In your world, disrespect doesn't deserve response, it earns disqualification. They expect you to argue, to fight back, to beg. But when you disappear instead, when you don't engage, they begin to panic. They start to reflect, because silence leaves a louder echo than words ever could. This is the power of emotional distance. It makes you feel rare, and rarity becomes value. Soon, people begin adjusting around you, not because you demanded it, but because your energy quietly refuses anything less. They sense your standards, not because you declare them, but because you never bend them. They realize you're not trying to fix them. You're not available the way others are. You're not here for their comfort. And that mystery becomes authority. You don't control through affection. You control through detachment. They realize that kindness doesn't buy access, that loyalty without alignment means nothing, that presence is a privilege you offer and revoke at will. You don't punish with anger, you punish with absence, and nothing haunts a manipulator more than being ignored by the one they couldn't manipulate. Dark intelligence doesn't make you heartless, it makes you surgical. You don't give emotional access by default. You choose who sees you, and even then, you never show all of you. That's the difference. Others run toward validation. You run toward clarity. They speak to be heard. You listen to understand. They offer love to avoid loneliness. You offer silence to expose desperation. They demand apologies. You offer indifference. They need closure. You don't acknowledge the door, because by now, you don't argue your value. You don't explain your limits. You don't ask for respect. You vanish when the energy shifts, and the absence becomes the only answer they'll ever get. That's the moment regret enters, not because of what you said, but because you said nothing. And nothing says everything. That's how power is earned, not by dominating others, but by mastering yourself. You don't need approval. You don't need validation. You don't even need to be understood, because you've built something stronger, a presence that cannot be challenged, a mind that cannot be manipulated. And that's how you win. Without battles, without noise, without lifting your voice. Something in you has shifted. You don't react the way you once did. You don't justify yourself. You don't engage in arguments that serve no purpose. You've become still, but not passive. Quiet, but not weak. That's what dark intelligence does. It doesn't turn you into a monster. It turns you into a mirror so clear others are forced to see themselves in it, and they don't always like what they find. Now you walk into rooms and say nothing. Yet every eye drifts toward you, not because of charm or theatrics, but because you carry something different. A presence, not loud, but felt. Not demanding, but undeniable. You don't need to dominate anyone. You've outgrown the game altogether, and that's what they never expect. You've become what they can't define. The one who wears masks when needed. The one who speaks in layered meaning. The one who moves behind the curtain, leaves no fingerprints, and exits before the applause. You're no longer readable, no longer shaken, no longer reachable through the methods others depend on. This is your final form, not a genius on stage, not a puppet master behind a podium, but a ghost in the system, moving pieces while others beg to understand the rules. You don't seek revenge, you remove people. You don't chase arguments, you shape outcomes. Because real power isn't in being seen, it's in being felt. You've become the kind of person who doesn't need to be understood to be feared. The kind of person who doesn't chase, but attracts. Who doesn't react, but designs. Who doesn't collapse, but watches others fall under the pressure of your silence. You stopped playing their game the moment you realized you could build your own. That's what happens when intelligence turns cold, when awareness evolves into prediction, when emotion no longer commands you, but bends to your will. This isn't about being better. It's about being smarter than the system itself, a system that rewards performance and punishes depth. But you've escaped that. You've carved your own reality. Machiavelli once said, "Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear." But dark intelligence offers a third path. Control without either. You don't need them to love you. You don't need them to fear you. You only need them to know, deeply, silently, permanently, that you are always watching. And now, if you've made it this far, something inside you is no longer just curious. It's ready. Ready to step off the stage, ready to close the book, ready to stop being predictable, stop being manipulated, stop being anyone's pawn, audience, or victim. Because you don't chase approval anymore, you recognize the cost. You don't seek connection, you evaluate value. You don't move emotionally, you move intentionally. You don't speak to be heard, you speak to plant, to shift, to tilt the balance in your favor without tipping your hand. Your words are never wasted. They are weapons, disguised, deliberate, and devastating. Every sentence is a setup, every silence, a trap, every smile, a blade concealed behind grace. You've learned that power doesn't come from attention. It comes from absence, from knowing when to walk away, and let that walking away change the atmosphere. Let that gap speak louder than presence ever could. This is how you operate now, as a strategist, not a servant, as a designer, not a participant. People think you're quiet because you're kind, but they don't realize kindness is a choice you calibrate, not a trait they can assume. You don't do favors to be liked. You calculate impact. You don't forgive to feel whole. You choose who gets a second chance, and who never knew they lost the first. And when the world doesn't meet your standard, you don't complain. You don't try to fix it. You simply withdraw your energy, not in anger, not in pain, but in precision. That's what makes people regret losing you, because they never heard you slam the door. They only noticed it never opened again. You don't offer clarity to those who disrespected your silence. You don't give closure to those who gambled with your patience. You just leave, and your absence becomes their echo, their consequence, their mirror. You've become something they don't have a category for. Not ruthless, not arrogant, just exact. You aren't triggered by noise anymore. You aren't drawn into drama. You aren't seduced by recognition, because you've built something within that can't be touched. This is what separates you. Others need attention to feel real. You've learned how to be invisible and invincible at the same time. You don't lead with your heart. You lead with your vision. And even when you love, you do so without compromise, without loss of clarity, without surrender of self. You've stopped being prey to other people's chaos. You don't absorb moods. You read them. You don't get pulled into storms. You stand at the edge and measure the direction of the wind. And when necessary, you disappear, not out of weakness, but because you know nothing confuses a manipulator more than not knowing what you're thinking. That's what they fear most. The unreadable, the unfazed, the unmoved. You became that, not by accident, but by evolution. This is the final threshold. You don't announce boundaries, you enforce them through consequence. You don't repeat your expectations, you demonstrate them through silence. You don't argue with fools. You let their noise be their punishment. And when people try to return, when they remember what you offered, when they realize what they lost, they won't know how to reach you. Because the version of you they mishandled no longer exists. That's what dark intelligence teaches you. To stop teaching people how to treat you and simply become untouchable. To stop proving your worth and let your absence reveal it. To stop reacting and start replacing emotion with architecture. By now you don't even need to try. Your presence corrects energy. Your silence resets dynamics. Your calm unsettles chaos. You aren't trying to change people. You're selecting who qualifies for your world. You're not here to win arguments. You're here to win outcomes. They still don't understand. They think strength is loud. They think control is about domination. But you know different. You know the most dangerous person in the room is the one who never had to raise their voice. Because real power is silent. And now you carry it. So what's your next move? You don't need to say it. They'll feel it soon enough.